Most men over 50 believe they would recognize it immediately if a woman was interested in them. Music. They imagine attraction arrives with obvious signs, direct compliments, lingering touches, or clear invitations that leave no room for doubt. The problem is that attraction rarely works that way anymore, especially among mature women. At this stage of life, most women are not going to walk up and announce their interest. They are not going to put themselves in a position where rejection feels obvious and public. Music. Instead, they do something much more subtle. They ask questions. The challenge is that these questions rarely sound romantic. So, music. In fact, most of them sound so ordinary that men answer them without realizing what is actually happening. Music. A woman asks something that appears casual on the surface. The man gives a practical answer. The conversation continues, and the opportunity quietly disappears. Music. He walks away believing they simply had a pleasant interaction. She walks away, believing he either was not interested or did, music, not notice what she was trying to communicate. This happens far more often than most men realize. Not because they lack confidence, music, not because they are unattractive, and certainly not because they are too old. It happens because the language of attraction changes with age. A woman in her 20s may flirt music one way. A woman in her 40s, 50s, or 60s often flirts very differently. She becomes more careful, more thoughtful, more indirect. Music, me, instead of making a move, she opens a door and waits to see if you notice it. That is what this conversation is really about. Over the next few sections, we are going to explore some of music, the most common questions women ask when they are interested, but not ready to say it outright. Once you understand what these questions actually mean, you will start noticing opportunities that may music have been sitting right in front of you all along. Because after 50, success is rarely about trying harder. More often, it comes from recognizing what was already there. The first question sounds simple enough, but it reveals far more than most men realize. A woman looks at you, smiles, and music asks, "How old are you really?" On the surface, it sounds playful. It sounds like small talk. It sounds like she is trying to fill a quiet moment in the conversation. Music. But if you pay close attention, there is usually something else happening underneath. She already knows you are not 30. She is not conducting a survey. Music. She is not collecting information for a spreadsheet. What she is really paying attention to is how you music respond when the subject of age enters the conversation. She wants to know whether you are comfortable with who you are or whether you secretly believe your best years are behind music, you. She is listening for confidence, not a number. This is where many men accidentally sabotage music themselves. The moment the question appears, they start apologizing for their age without realizing music, it. They make jokes about getting old. They talk about aching joints. They laugh at themselves before anyone else has the chance. The woman may smile politely, but something, music, changes. Not because she cares about the number, but because she notices the discomfort hiding behind the answer. A stronger response is relaxed, music, and self-assured, something that communicates you have made peace with your journey. So, music, not arrogance, not pretending to be younger, just a quiet acceptance of where you are in life. I remember speaking with a man who told me about meeting a woman during a live music event in music. They were talking comfortably when she tilted her head and asked, "So, how old are you really?" Instead of answering directly, he immediately started joking about senior discounts and forgetting where music he left his keys. She laughed, but the conversation never quite recovered its earlier energy. Music. Later, he admitted something important. The question was not what made him uncomfortable. It was what the question made him think about. That is why this moment matters. When a woman asks how old you are, she is often trying to discover something much deeper than music, your age. She is trying to see whether you still feel alive, engaged, and confident in your own story. And the answer she remembers is rarely the number, it is the energy behind it. Another question that often catches men by surprise is, why aren't you married? It can sound personal when you first hear it. Some men even hear it as criticism, as if they are being asked to explain themselves, but most of the time, that is not what is happening at all. When a woman asks this with genuine curiosity, she is rarely conducting an investigation into your past. Die music sacrifice. So ishi earby. She is trying to understand your present. What she is really asking is whether there is room in your life for someone else. Music. She wants to know if you are emotionally available, if your heart is open, and if your past music still controls the way you approach relationships today. The question may be about marriage on the surface, music, but underneath it is often about possibility. This is where many men accidentally close the door. Music. Some immediately begin explaining every failed relationship they have ever had. Others talk at length about divorce, betrayal, heartbreak, or disappointment. Then there are the men who respond with bitterness, saying things like, marriage isn't worth the trouble, or I've learned my lesson. Music. They may think they are being honest, but what she hears is something different. She hears a man who may still be carrying music yesterday into today. A much stronger response is calm and simple. You don't need to tell your life story. Music. You don't need to hide your past either. You simply need to show that you have learned from it without being trapped by it. A response music like, life took me in a few different directions, but I'm open to the right person. Music says far more than a 20-minute explanation ever could. I once heard about a man who met a woman during a charity event. Music. They spent most of the evening talking and laughing together. Near the end of the night, she asked, how is it that a man like you isn't music, married? He immediately launched into a long explanation about everything that had gone wrong in his previous relationships. Music. She listened politely, but the easy energy between them seemed to disappear. Later, he realized she wasn't asking music for a history lesson. She was trying to discover whether there could be a future. That is why this question matters. A woman who asks why you are not married is often testing music, the waters, without saying so directly. She is trying to determine whether your past is behind you or whether it is still sitting in the room between the two of you. And the way you answer often tells her more than you realize. Another question that sounds innocent, music, but often carries far more meaning than men realize, is this one. Do you date younger women? The moment a woman asks it, many men become unsure of what to do. Some treat it like a compliment. Others immediately become defensive. A few assume it is a trap and try to avoid answering altogether. What they fail to recognize is that the question is rarely about younger women in general. More often, it is about one woman in particular. What she is really trying to discover is whether you could ever see someone like her as a possibility. Music. She is not asking for a list of your previous relationships. She is not asking you to justify your preferences. She is trying to understand whether the connection happening music between the two of you is something you would actually allow yourself to explore. This is where many men accidentally create distance. Some start bragging about younger women they have dated in the past, believing it makes them appear more desirable. Others immediately dismiss the idea, music, by saying something like, no, I'm too old for that, without realizing they have just rejected the possibility she was quietly considering. Both responses miss what she is really asking. A better response keeps the focus on connection rather than age. Something simple and genuine often works best. Music. You might say, I pay more attention to how I connect with someone than the number attached to their age. Or Me, chemistry, character, and compatibility matter much more than a birth year. Answers like these allow the conversation to stay open while showing confidence and maturity. Music. I remember hearing about a man who met a woman during a weekend book club. They spent the afternoon discussing novels, sharing stories, and enjoying each other's company. At one point, she smiled and asked, "Do you usually date younger women?" Yung wani music. Instead of turning it into a debate about age, he simply replied, "I enjoy spending time with people I genuinely connect with. That's always mattered more. Music to me." Her smile grew noticeably warmer after that because she had received the answer she was really looking music for. The important thing to remember is that questions like this are often invitations disguised as curiosity. She is not asking whether younger women interest you. Music. She is wondering whether she does. And when you understand that difference, the entire conversation changes. One of the most overlooked questions a woman can ask is this, Yan Music. What kind of woman do you usually go for? Most men hear that question and assume she is simply making music conversation. They think she is asking about preferences the same way someone might ask about favorite foods or travel destinations. Music. But when a woman asks this during a warm and engaged conversation, there is often something much deeper happening beneath the surface. She is not just gathering information, she is quietly comparing herself to the picture you are about to paint. Music. She wants to know if she belongs in that picture. She wants to know whether the qualities she sees in herself are qualities you genuinely value in a woman. Music. In many cases, she is trying to determine whether leaning a little closer emotionally would make sense or whether she should keep her distance. This is where many men unintentionally make a mistake. They begin listing physical traits as though they are filling out an order form. They talk about height, hair color, body type, age, music, or a collection of preferences that sound more like a fantasy than a real person. While they think they are answering honestly, music, what she often hears, is a man focused on an image rather than a connection. A stronger answer shifts the focus toward qualities music that create meaningful relationships. You might say, "I appreciate a woman who is kind, curious, music, emotionally mature, and able to enjoy life without taking everything so seriously." Music. Notice the difference. Instead of describing a look, you are describing a feeling. Instead of outlining a fantasy, you are talking about the kind of connection that actually lasts. I once heard about a man who met a woman through music, a volunteer program. They spent several weeks working together and naturally grew comfortable around each other. One afternoon, she casually asked, "So what music kind of woman do you usually go for?" He paused and answered, "Someone who makes life feel lighter, someone I can talk to for hours and still want another conversation tomorrow." She smiled and said, "That's a much better answer than I expected." That is the hidden power of this question. She is not only asking about your type, she is quietly wondering whether she could be it. And the way you answer may tell her far more than you realize. Another question that often appears when a woman is interested is one that many men completely misread. She smiles, looks at you for a moment, and says, "Why gi?" Are you always this charming? On the surface, na are nai sis, it sounds playful. It sounds like a compliment wrapped inside a question. Most men laugh, brush it aside, or assume she is simply music being nice. What they fail to realize is that she is doing something much more important. Music. She is acknowledging the connection she feels while giving you a chance to acknowledge it too. Music. This is one of the few moments where attraction briefly rises above the surface. She is not talking about charm. She already knows you are charming, otherwise she would not have asked the question. What she is really trying to discover is whether you can stay present in the moment without hiding behind a joke or pretending you did not notice what just happened. So music. Many men become uncomfortable when they receive genuine warmth. The second a compliment arrives, they immediately deflect it. They joke about music it, they dismiss it, they act as though they do not deserve it. Unfortunately, when they do that, they often shut down the very moment she was trying to create. A stronger response is simple, relaxed, and confident. Music, something like only when I'm enjoying the company. Or maybe the right person brings it out of me. Music, the goal is not to impress her. The goal is to stay in the moment instead of running away from it. Music, I once heard about a man attending a dinner gathering where he spent most of the evening talking with a woman he had just met. Their conversation flowed naturally, music, and there was an easy energy between them. At one point, she smiled and asked, "Are you always this charming?" Instead of laughing it off, he smiled back and said, "Only when the conversation gives me a reason to be." Music. She held his gaze a little longer after that, and the connection noticeably deepened. That is why this question matters. It is is rarely about charm. It is about chemistry. She is giving you a small opening and waiting to see whether you step into it or quietly step away. Music. Another question that many women ask when they are interested is, why don't you have a girlfriend? At first glance, music, it sounds simple. It sounds like curiosity. It sounds like the kind of thing someone might ask during an ordinary conversation. Music. But when a woman asks this while smiling, maintaining eye contact, and staying engaged with you, there is often more happening beneath the surface than most men realize. Music. She is not asking because she wants a detailed report about your relationship history. Music. She is not looking for a list of reasons why previous relationships did not work. What she is really trying to discover is whether there is room in your life for someone now. Music. She wants to know whether you are emotionally available or whether your heart is still occupied by something from the past. This is where many men accidentally close the door without realizing it. Some immediately talk about how difficult relationships are. Others explain how much they enjoy being alone. Some tell long stories about disappointment, betrayal, or heartbreak. While those answers may be honest, they often communicate music something she was not hoping to hear. Instead of hearing possibility, she hears resistance. A better response leaves space for the future. Something music like, I've been focused on other things, but I'm still open to meeting the right person. Music, or I haven't found the connection I was looking for yet. These answers are honest without sounding closed. Music. They tell her that your life is full but not sealed shut. I remember hearing about a man who met a woman at a local art exhibit. They spent nearly an hour discussing paintings and sharing stories. Near the end of the evening, she asked Music, "How does a man like you not have a girlfriend?" He smiled and replied, "Maybe I've been waiting for someone worth making room for." She laughed softly, Music, but more importantly, she stayed in the conversation. The question had not been about his relationship status. It had been about whether she could imagine herself becoming part music of his future. That is why this question matters. It may sound casual, but often it is a woman quietly trying to find out whether the door is open before she risks taking music another step toward it. Then there is a question that sits closer to the truth than almost any music other. A woman looks at you, maybe with a smile, maybe with a little nervous energy she is trying to hide, and she asks, "Music, would you ever date someone like me?" Most men hear the question and immediately start overthinking it. Music. They wonder whether she is joking, being polite, making conversation, or simply curious. What they fail to recognize is how much vulnerability is often hidden inside those few music words. Think about what has to happen before a woman asks that question. Instead of taking huge emotional risks, they often take small ones. A question here, a playful comment there, a little opening that allows them to explore you. Music, the possibility without feeling exposed. When you understand that, something changes. You stop hearing these questions as random conversation. You start recognizing them as opportunities. Music, not opportunities to impress anyone, but opportunities to be present enough to notice what is actually happening. Because the truth is that attraction after 50 is often much quieter than it was decades ago. She has already imagined the possibility. She has already wondered what it would be like. Music. She has already considered whether the connection between the two of you could become something more. The question is not the beginning of the thought. The question is the result of the thought. This is why so many opportunities disappear in moments like these. A man becomes uncomfortable. He gives a neutral answer. He changes the subject. He laughs it off because he is afraid of assuming too much. Music. In trying to protect himself, he unintentionally makes her feel exposed. She took a small emotional risk and received uncertainty in return. Music. The strongest response is usually the simplest one. Not a clever line, not a performance. Music. Just honesty. Something that acknowledges the possibility she is placing in front of you. Music. Because what she is really asking is not whether you date women like her. She is asking whether you see her. I remember hearing about a man who met a woman through a walking group. Music. After several weeks of easy conversations and shared laughs, they found themselves watching the sunset after a group event. There was a quiet pause between them before she finally asked, "Would you ever date someone like me?" He could have turned it into a joke. He could have avoided the moment. Instead, Music smiled and said, "If the connection felt right, absolutely." Her entire expression softened. Music, because she finally had her answer. That is the hidden meaning behind questions like this. They are not requests, Music, for information. They are moments of courage. And when a woman offers you one of those moments, the real opportunity is not in finding the perfect response. It is in recognizing what she is truly giving you. Music. By now, you may have noticed a pattern running through all questions. On the surface, they sound completely different. One woman asks about your age, Music. Another asks why you are not married. Someone else asks whether you date younger women or what Music kind of woman you usually go for. The words change, but the deeper purpose rarely does. In almost every case, she is trying to answer a question she is not quite ready to ask directly. Music. The mistake many men make is treating these moments as requests for information instead of invitations to connection. They focus on giving the correct answer, Music, rather than understanding why the question appeared in the first place. As a result, they respond logically when the moment actually requires awareness. They hear the words but miss the feeling underneath them. What makes these moments so powerful is that they reveal something about the music way attraction works later in life. Most mature women are not looking for dramatic gestures or complicated games. Music, they are looking for safety, clarity, and signs that their interest will be met with warmth rather than embarrassment.